What a great day. Great to have all of you here. It's a pleasure and honor and a privilege to support all of you to get us here today. It's a new beginning for the company. Doesn't seem like so long ago. 4 years ago, Bill Gross called me. I'll never forget it. Bill called me. He didn't know I was in Switzerland. And he said, Rob, I have the penultimate idea for energy storage, and you're going to be the CEO. And we got started, and here we are in just 4 short years, but very important years, and very important for the planet and our mission of decarbonization. It's an honor to be here. This is a new beginning, a new rebirth of the company. We're a public company now. Thank you all for being here and being a part of this. Thank you very much.
Today we have here Mr. Piconi. It's a pleasure and honor to meet you again. And thank you for accepting this interview and spend some time with us. So Garbo Management, as you know, is the main partner and founder of the Executive Award, a prize that you won in 2019. And you, as a CEO of NRGV, in the meantime, quoted your company at the New York Stock Exchange with the ticker symbol NRGV. So how was it personally for you ringing the bell at New York Stock Exchange?
If I had to choose one word, I would say just humbling. Okay. Just so humbling because I didn't really know what to expect going in because it was a very busy time going into the IPO, and then we were arranging a lot of the employees, investors, a lot of my family to come in, so it was so intense going in. But then the morning, it all became very real, and it was just amazing showing up at the New York Stock Exchange, being chauffeured through the buildings, the hallways, the gold leaves on the ceilings, and so historical. It's the platform of, the largest platform of commerce for the world, the New York Stock Exchange. So I say humbling because one, just to be there and to be ringing the bell to kick off the market. Of course, it was La Festa di San Valentino, which was also interesting, no? Because for me, it was interesting for investors, for family, for everybody on this day. But just the whole idea of then going up on the platform, ringing the bell, very interesting. I had 2 of my family members up on the platform. So my father, who's 81 years old, and really the patriarch of our family, and then his youngest grandchild. So my father has 19 grandchildren. I have 8 children, so I have a good chunk of those grandchildren. But our youngest grandchild in the family happens to be my youngest son, Vito. And so I had 3 generations, my father 81, myself, who I'm 51, and Vito, 13 years old, all up there, of course, with the investors that helped along the way, some of the management team, the co-founder Bill Gross, who I've known now 12 years. So the whole experience was humbling in the sense of representing our company, representing the employees, having the family there, sort of the circle of life, all there, and then walking downstairs to actually meet the market maker and begin the trading on the floor. So you meet the person with the first ticket, which we went off at $12, which is nice. It was 20% up from the day before. So it was just an experience difficult to explain, just humbling in general. And I still am still thinking about that experience. So wonderful.
Yes, very nice. It's just 10 years from that moment. So I can imagine even your employees and the company itself, how proud of you they were.
Yeah, it had only been 4 years since we founded the company. And it was, I think, I tried to explain to the employees how significant this is and unusual to do this in such a short period of time and at a valuation, a multi-billion valuation of the company. And it's a reflection of, I think, our focus on decarbonization, how important that's become for the world now. And as a result, with some of the market changes, in particular the last 18 months, and whether it be governments, companies, a lot of investment now shifting to renewables, this is something that now there's a lot of potential recognized in the market, and therefore for companies like ours that are trying to solve this problem of decarbonization.
Nice.
Yeah.
So yes, just back in 2019, when you won the executive award for the innovation project, could you imagine that only in 3 years, as you mentioned, Energy Vault would have become a public company?
You know, back then we weren't thinking about an IPO. Back then we were just building the technology, and we had recently announced the SoftBank investment. So we had just recently announced in July 2019 the investment by SoftBank, which is the largest fund in the world, 100 billion. And that was significant for our company. It was a large investment, so we announced 110 million. So this was in energy storage, one of the largest investments ever made. So this, for sure back then, and from meeting for the executive board back then, we had also just been awarded and nominated for the World Economic Forum award. So this, the Technology Pioneer, which also is a great honor, because what I love about that award is it's a truly global award. It's not regional, or it's not like US specific or country specific. I think the World Economic Forum really looks at a global level, and as a result of that, that was also something that began to put us on the map a bit as a company, this small company from Ticino. So this was important. But I would also say from 2019, as we ramped with that investment, we had a pretty difficult time with COVID. So while the 3 years since, of course, have been amazing, but were not easy. We had a COVID environment that hit this region very strongly and put a lot of uncertainty in the company, and we had to take actions. We had to lower our operating expense, because in March 2020, I don't know if you remember, but nobody knew what was going to happen with the world. So because we're a startup and we're building our technology for the first time, we took some actions to lower operating expense. All the executives took 50% cuts. All the employees uniformly agreed to lower salaries, so we could extend the runway of the company. So I think nobody expected this, and it was, well, for sure, from 2019 and moving forward, it seems longer, but it's actually been quite a short period to get to the IPO. There were things we had to manage through there that were difficult, but the employees all accepted. They all hung in there uniformly. We didn't lose one person. They all understood that we had to secure the company for the future, and they were all committed to it, because it starts with our mission in this company of decarbonization. So they were really committed to that. So it was something, I think, while that was a difficult part in 2020, of course, late 2020 and 2021 was just a complete shift. So it's just amazing all the ups and downs in the world that took place with, from Larry Fink from BlackRock came out in late 2020 saying the trillions they're spending in fossil fuel is now going to be put into renewable and green energy transition. That was important. The Biden win in the US politically, that shifted the priority for policy in the United States to more of a renewable future as opposed to fossil fuel. Some of the largest companies in the world were making announcements and commitments to net carbon neutral for everything in their operations. And even countries like that never historically had made commitments publicly, like China, were coming out with commitments and putting a stake in the ground or acceleration. Germany accelerated their timeline. So these, I'd say from 2019 to now, it's just been an amazing up and down between the global pandemic and then a shift in the way and the priority the world thought about or was thinking about or was prioritizing this clean energy transition. So and that's what just put us right into the IPO discussion, because of the progress of the company, both commercially and with the technology demonstration here in Arbedo.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, yes, just you answered in some way, but if you could tell us a couple of secrets, that made the difference to reach such a goal, and now the company is making the difference in terms of a theme that is very important to have, which is thriving by giving more than it takes. It's the so-called net positive.
Sure. Well, look, I've worked 31 years in the markets. I've worked in large Fortune 100 public companies. I've built companies from nothing and built them and grown them and successfully sold them or to a liquidity event. So with that experience, and I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, you learn what works and what things maybe you should do in certain situations. So I would say that for sure all those learnings were very helpful for me in Energy Vault. And it's just a culmination of things over my career that you grow, you develop, you get coached on things and you sort of look back. I'm in general, very critical of myself. If things don't go well, I always look back and think about what could I have done different. So I would say all that experience was very helpful for Energy Vault, because Energy Vault had these ups and downs as well. And one thing that I learned, especially at even companies, very large ones like Danaher, Danaher's one of the best performing public equities in the world for 25 years it was for a period. And why? A lot of reasons, but one of the things they did very well was they anticipated and took actions earlier when there was just the slightest risk. So they were very proactive in what they called going red early, meaning putting a red flag early and acting. So I would say this aspect of anticipating, hoping for the best, but planning for the worst, this is fundamental, and I think it really served me with Energy Vault, because with COVID, we were looking at a runway that was only going to be 6 to 9 months unless we took action to reduce the operating expense. So I would say that anticipation and taking action, it's tough to do because they're not easy decisions. We didn't take them lightly, but it was necessary. And I think the employees understood that it was necessary, and then in the end appreciated, because it gave life to our company as things ramped up. We had interest of new investors. We had the entry of things we've announced. Saudi Aramco came in and invested, the largest energy company in the world. We did a round with a group called Helena, which is a great social responsibility firm that's just been a great partner. And a lot of strategics have come in, and we've announced NL Green Power, of course. We announced a storage collaboration and remediation of wind blades as well. So I'd say that aspect was probably served very well in the company, and this aspect of anticipating and being able to adapt. They're related, but adapting yourself to what's changing in the world was fundamental. And the example I'll use gets right up to the IPO, where we entered the IPO market in the first half of 2021, where the market was very positive for these special purpose acquisition companies, or SPACs. They placed certain valuations on companies that had high growth potential in attractive industries, which, energy storage, renewable energy, it's a very attractive industry. It has high growth CAGRs, or compounded annual growth rates over time. The spending's anticipated to be anywhere from 300 to 600 billion over the next 10 to 20 years. So we're in a very good market, but the market shifted. The market shifted in May, where when interest rates started to become potentially a risk given inflation, the market started to revalue high growth. Anytime there's more risk or an escalating environment for interest rates, the market's going to take a little more cautious view on growth stocks that don't have revenue yet or don't have profit. So this aspect of adapting ourselves, and through the IPO, we adapted our structure to get a deal done in a very difficult environment in what's called the pipe markets and raising the money from the funds. It was very challenging, but we not only got the deal done, we raised a Series C of 107 million we announced in August. We announced our deal, the business combination for the SPAC and going public, in September. And then the two very interesting announcements in December and January, again in very difficult markets. We had two strategic customers we were speaking to about storage, and they wanted to invest in our IPO, and not $10 million, but each $50 million. Okay. So we took another 100 million into the company, which this is another learning I had. Don't say no when someone wants to give you money, because you really, you never know what tomorrow brings. So this was a learning. I'm not dilution sensitive, meaning in taking that money that does dilute the other shareholders, including myself. I'm the largest individual shareholder in the company as a single individual, but we took that investment because that means the strategic companies were obviously going to be spending a lot of money with us over time, because they wanted to invest in the company and participate. So I think all those learnings, these types of things, have served me well in this role. I'm still growing and learning as a leader. I learn from great people that we work with in the company every day, and it's really a pleasure.
We are now launching the Executive Award on a global scale, as you know, and the jury will consider this net positive that I mentioned.
Yes.
So it's like an inspiration for us, you know, to inspire people to do great. And so a net positive company is a company that improves the lives of everyone it touches, basically, and takes ownership of all the social and environmental impacts its business model creates, and partners with competitors, civil society, and governments to drive transformative change that no single group or enterprise could deliver alone. So we believe you, as a courageous leader, perfectly respond to all these three sentences, you know. So, but which one fits you better and you want to keep pursuing more?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I love those three parameters for what they signify and why they're important for companies. So, but I would say that the first two are fundamental because of what we do, meaning we're in renewable energy, we're bettering the planet, it's part of the clean energy transition that touches people. Also, to the second point, we're sustainable. So unique to us in energy storage is not only are we solving a problem for renewable energy, that's the intermittency of the wind and solar. For us to stop fossil fuel, we need to make wind and solar predictable. And unfortunately, you can't predict the wind and you can't predict the sun. So that's why energy storage is so important, but very difficult to do. So I think in the second point around how we're solving the problem sustainably, we can use waste materials, for example, in the production of these composite blocks that are the storage medium for us. And that's significant. We don't use concrete. The production of concrete represents about 7 to 8% of the greenhouse gases. So it's massive. So we want to avoid, but not only do we avoid it and we can use soil from the ground, but we can use waste materials that would otherwise go to landfills. Very expensive and very bad for the environment. So things like coal ash, tailings from the mining process that comes out of that mining process, wind blades, these fiberglass blades from these massive blades that are 50 meters long. After about 10 years, they suffer what's called fatigue and they have to be replaced. Historically, they would just bury them or burn them. Think about that fiberglass, you just bury in the ground or burn it. It's now illegal in the EU. Last July, the EU made it illegal, and I applaud them for that. The US, I think, is going to follow, but we announced with NL Green Power the research collaboration to reuse that wind blade fiberglass, because we use this virgin fiberglass in our recipe for our blocks anyway. But we announced a large collaboration to reuse that material that, again, otherwise it's a big problem because they have to replace all these massive wind blades. They're building new ones. So we have to have this circular economic focus in the world. I believe it's an obligation for all companies to think not only about the product they're selling, how is it made, what's the carbon footprint for your product, that I believe that we all have this responsibility. So, but the main point to your question where we have focused is this last one, because it's the most difficult. It's the most difficult because you have to rely on things that you don't control. So you mentioned working with communities, working with government organizations. And while it's the most difficult, it has the potential to be the greatest impact, right? Because if you can align policy at a governmental level or at even across regions or countries with companies that have a strategy to help, for example, sustainability or the clean energy transition, that's where you can have the biggest global impact, and that is the most difficult. And what I'll share with you and why that's a focus, and it's a focus for me personally, we announced, the latest announcement we announced in January was very significant in that we're announced a deal with a group called Atlas Renewable that's Texas-based. It's led by the chairman, Neil Bush, who's the son of George H. Bush, former president, the brother of George W. Bush, former president. And we've been working with them on looking at how to address China and how do we enter with the technology. And we announced a very significant license and royalty agreement where their group is majority owned by a recycling player in China that's part of the Fortune 500 of companies in China. So it's publicly traded. It's called China Taiying. And we've agreed to first license the technology to them. Remember, this is US and China. So it's very unusual that you have a new innovative technology being introduced in China because of historical IP concerns, political relationships. So we announced not only that in a 50 million license in 2022 for that, but a royalty agreement to deploy it, a first project of 100 megawatt hour that's breaking ground the end of March, so right away. It's a very large project. It's going to be done in a province called Lugano that's outside of Shanghai. And they really want to be first in the world to deploy and scale. And the reason that's so significant and why did we choose to do that, even though we have announced large things in Australia, in the United States, and really in many key regions of the world, why China? It was less about, I'd say, priority and economics, but more about the imperative, what's happening in China. They are planning to increase greenhouse gases for the next 9 years through 2030. This is their publicly stated plan. It's called 3060, which again, I applaud what China's doing and putting a stake in the ground. They've looked at their energy growth and demand. Unfortunately, there's not enough energy storage, so they can't have renewables to replace fossils. So they're still building fossil fuel plants. And the problem is they're planning to grow through 2030, and then they're planning to reach net carbon neutral in 2060. So that's why it's called the 3060 plan from China. So I think that's an important first step, but it's not enough. And we felt the need to act and enter China to try to accelerate that timeline for their peak of emissions, not 2030. That is too long. The world can't afford that, and there's no walls around China. So when they emit greenhouse gases, we all suffer. By the way, the US is the number 2 in greenhouse gas emissions. China is 2.2 times the US though, and so they're the largest in greenhouse gas emissions. So we really felt it was an imperative to address this as a company in China and to try to accelerate that timeline. And that's to this third point, which I think is so important that you have this as a criteria around collaborating with communities, with government, with policy, because we put politics aside to get this deal done. They did as well. They understood the problem of IP protection, so they not only invested 50 million in the company as investors, so they're an investor now, but they invested 50 million up front for a license just for the right to deploy it, to show us, look, this is too important, we have to solve this problem. We're going to protect your IP because we're investing in your company and we're demonstrating it with the license up front. So that's the most challenging to do. I have a lot of work on it that I'm going to personally be doing. China's going to be important. This deal where we globally united, forgetting politics and addressing real issues and problems of IP protection. And I think it's the first of a kind that I'm aware of where you have a brand new US technology being introduced at the same time it's being introduced in the world in China. So very excited about it, but that's the area where I think we can have the biggest impact, and it's that third one.
Okay. Of course, we are so curious now to follow Energy Vault, and once you transition to a public company, what is the next step in your agenda, let's say?
Actually, this may surprise you, but nothing really changes for us in terms of our focus, which we've been, because of the way we capitalized the company, that we got another 107 million in August last year. We did that for reasons, so regardless of the capital markets or what would happen in the IPO markets, I mean, you never know, right, what could happen. We funded the company in a way to focus on execution. And for us, that means focusing on customers and delivering for customers. So the good news is there's no change in the company and our focus, even as a public company. Now, obviously, to your point, there is a different threshold, a different compliance obligation. There's a lot of obligations around transparency now, quarterly reporting. So there's a machine now that has to run every quarter, and an obligation that we have as a company to meet expectations that we set. So that is not a small responsibility, and I take that very seriously as a leader of the company. And I think it's important as we begin our journey as a public company that we start in a very positive way, that investors know that when they invest with us, when we say we're going to do something, that we do it. Obviously, things can happen in the world from a macro perspective, but for what we control and what we say we're going to do, we have to do it. I mean, that's just the way we're going to operate. And I think it's so important this year, our first year as a public company. It's our first year of deployment. It's our first revenue we're planning. We have a plan for 148 million of revenue this year. So we're very committed to that. The good news is, coming back to how I answered the question the first time, we've been executing, and that's what's resulted in all these announcements with customers, these strategic groups that are investing. So for us as a company, besides some of the formal structural things that are changing, there's really not much changing operationally.
Okay. So where will be your presence more important now?
Well, you know, when you have a large family, that obviously is my first priority, and I always try to balance that. I have 8 children, so I have quite a large family, probably a little bigger than most, I imagine. I'm always that extreme, you know, just the way my life's been. So it starts there, and I would say this becomes less about Lugano and California and more about my time based on the global needs of our business. I mentioned we've announced some very large partners in Australia. BHP that is an investor, and they're the largest mining company in the world. Korea Zinc is the largest producer of non-ferrous metals, including zinc, silver, indium, lead. So these massive groups that are building out in Australia, they're mining, but they want to electrify their operations. We're going to be there in a big way. We're going to be in China, as I said. We have a lot we're doing in the U.S. And really demand all over the world, South America, South Africa, and in Europe. So what's important is priority right now. You know, that starts with your life, right? It starts with your life. And for me, that means my family. And but, you know, my children really believe in the mission that we're doing and that we're doing as a company. And so it's really interesting to share with them and interact on these things as we build. And they're very curious. And they've all been to the site here in Arbedo Castione, where we have the 5 megawatt, the famous Torre. But I would say in general, for sure, California, given I have children there, and Lugano here will be important because we have employee bases too. So it's important that I get time with the employees, because you always learn, you know, you always learn a lot just by visiting and having one-on-ones and when you're present to people. But in general, a lot of my time is going to be spent more on priorities from a company perspective of where we're building out now with our customers. So our focus, my focus, our focus as employees, our focus as a company is on our customers. And we always have to listen and not drink our own Kool-Aid, not feel like our stuff is better because we're Energy Vault, but really listen to them. And that has served us well. We iterated our product in less than 4 years from that torre there, that tower, to something much more streamlined, much more modular, something that addresses actually a larger market for us. And that's not easy to do, and to innovate and throw in a little thing called COVID in there. There's really been a lot. So, but all of that has and was the result of us focusing on and listening to our customers. And we will always do that. That will drive the company, and therefore, to close on your question, will drive where I spend my time.
Okay. Very nice, thank you. And we were speaking about time, so I want to thank you for your time with us and to prioritize this time for us. I know you're very busy. So yeah, I just want to leave you with a few appointments, and it's an invitation also to join us on October 5th. We have the next Executive Award in Lugano.
Oh, great.
And yes, and I take the advantage to tell you that you are automatically, nominated for...
Oh, wow, great. Because of the past.
Award
because
of
the
the
past.
awards, yes,
okay.
of course.
Oh, fantastic.
And so we decided this year to introduce one new prize, which is the Award of the Awards. So
okay.
This means I think you could be nominated for
Oh,
that. I think, I'm not sure.
Well, I see you all are still innovating with the Executive Board, so I think that's really unique and interesting. And it's, of course, an honor and a pleasure. And I will make sure, of course, I'm here for that. I would love to be a part of it and support it and really applaud what you all are doing to really elevate, I think, the things companies are doing, of course, from Ticino, but really what they're doing from a social perspective, from a sustainability perspective, and what they're doing and the impact they're having. Again, not only here, of course, in Ticino, but the impact that they can have around the globe. So it's fantastic, and I think it's been, how long have we been doing the executive board now? About the same time, 3-4 years?
Yes,
it started
it's from 2018. So
2018. Okay,
yeah.
That's the same year we started. We started here January 2018. So
okay,
so that's a parallel with
okay,
our
please,
with our group. So
let
that's
us
great.
go like this. By the way, we have a little quotation, and this is a second invitation for
okay,
you.
okay.
A kind of quotation for us would be to be at Rockefeller Center in September 2023, where
in New York.
Yes, in New York, where the global edition of this award would take place. So it would be an honor to have you there too.
By the way, is this the first time you're doing a global
Yes.
award then? And of course, New York, I think that's the right choice, having just been there for the IPO.
know,
and the Rockefeller Center is amazing. We actually hosted a brunch on Sunday. We went to St. Patrick's Cathedral there, and then I took my family there for lunch up on they call it Top of the Rock, and you get to see everything. So it's beautiful. What a great venue, and for your first global award ceremony. That's fantastic. Well, hopefully I can go to that. Hopefully I'll be invited to that as well.
Hopefully, yes. Let's see.
Yeah.
But no, this initiative is becoming great. Thank you, great people like you, leaders we inspire from. So thank you. We hope to see you there, of course.
Yes,
and
it'll be a pleasure.
Thanks again for
Great.
this.
Rossella, thank you. It's a pleasure.